Is being a public school teacher really that hard? As a student, I do agree it's probably hard. But today I'm going to be talking to one to settle it once and for all for at least one person's opinion on it. Today I'm going to be talking to a public school teacher and what's their life? Is what are the pros and cons? Stuff like that. Hope you enjoy. Hi, nice to finally meet you. I'm glad that you said yes to coming on my podcast this week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I guess let's just get started with the questions if you're ready.
Sure.
Okay. Well, first, how did you get inspired to become an elementary school teacher or a teacher at all?
Well, actually, I most of my life I did other jobs. Some my passion was more for writing and everything. And one day, a member of my family called me and said they were going to go check out the teaching program at Upper Iowa and asked if I wanted to go. And I said, sure, I had nothing better to do. And by the time we were done, I was the one who signed up to get my degree, and he decided not to.
How come not like substitute teacher or just like how come you chose what grade did you choose to?
Well, I wanted to do elementary school because I don't know that it used to allow you to bring out the craftiness in you. You could do crafty things with you and your kids and fun things. Unlike as they got older, and they don't want you to do fun things with them, and the school doesn't really want you to do fun things with anybody anymore. It seems like.
So times kind of changed, right? And you're since the reason you kind of want to get into this.
Yeah, you could say so.
Oh, okay. So how long have you been teaching for, and what grades have you taught?
I've been teaching now. This is my 20th year. I've taught kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade.
Oh, so the whole of it, so pretty much all of elementary.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've only been in elementary school. I'm certified to teach through eighth grade, but I've only ever taught in elementary school.
How come?
That's where I enjoyed it the most.
But with everything changing, how come you didn't decide to? Because you recently picked up and went to a different school.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go to a middle school, and that's where I thought that I was going to have to go to get out of the school that I was in for 20 years because I just really needed a change for lots of reasons. But it turned out that the first job offer I got was exactly really what I wanted more than anything, and that was to go back to second grade. So that's where I chose to go.
How do you like it so far?
Well, I don't really know much about it. All I've really done is looked at my new room and dropped off my stuff for this coming fall. So other than that, everyone's been very kind and welcoming there so far. So
do you think you'll like it there if you stay there for the next couple of years?
I hope so, because I only plan to probably still teach for 2 more years.
Oh, what's your favorite part of teaching young children?
My favorite part of teaching young children is something that maybe I don't know, you've been working on, then all of a sudden, even if it's just one of the kids, just all of a sudden just gets it, and they get so excited about getting it and understanding it, and then they can kind of help the other kids around them who aren't getting it to explain it. I really think it's great if you can teach a child, but then they can also help to teach each other. So that's really a cool thing.
So that's basically kind of why you got into it in the first place, so you could get the joy of having kids love to learn.
Yeah, I never had that. I never had a teacher really inspire me to teach in elementary school, except for maybe my art teacher who and the music teacher. I loved both of them. They were great. But my other regular classroom teachers were, I don't know, they just didn't seem like they were enjoying it either. Maybe, I don't know.
So it was kind of like you tried it, you somehow enjoyed it, and you kind of just stuck with it.
You mean for like when I decided to become a teacher?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I wanted to be a teacher because I didn't know what else I wanted to do when I was 18 and I went to college. And then they had a program where you could go before you actually get into it and do your practicum at the end, where you could go and kind of hang out in a classroom for several weeks. And
like a demo?
Well, you just kind of go and just get a real feel for it. And I loved doing that. But then when I found out at that time how much they made, I said, there's no way I am going to work these many hours and not get paid more than get paid actually less than a babysitter gets paid. So that was ridiculous to me at the time.
Compared to now, how much do you think you made? Like, compared from then and now, like, what's the difference you think?
Oh, probably about $60,000.
Oh, so it kind of depended on what times it was, basically.
Well, I mean, back then the economy was different. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago, so or plus, and so the economy was different. So and teachers were way much more underappreciated then, and classrooms were easier to do too. I mean, kids came in better behaved, and they just kind of it felt like kids back then knew what to expect when they came into a classroom, whereas now kids just kind of do what they want a lot of times.
But aren't teachers pretty much still aren't they still undervalued in the
Very
work?
much so. Even though, it seems like I'll go out and someone finds out you're a teacher and say, oh, wow, I really appreciate everything you do and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, you guys vote for people who really don't want to pay us what we're worth. It's a catch-22. I think mostly people appreciate us just because they can get rid of their kids 9 months out of the year and not have to deal with them.
That's the thing about it is daycare, but maybe a little education.
I think a lot of it is parents just think of us as daycare so that they don't have to worry about what to do with us. I mean, where I teach is very low income, where I've taught these 20 years. So we really don't have the parental support that we would like. Now, that's not to say we never do. I've had some parents that are brilliant and wonderful and warm and loving who have been very supportive. But, every class you get, if we're lucky, we get, 3 or 4 of those, whereas the rest of the class, they will tell you, yes, they'll do it and take care of it, and then nothing ever gets done or taken care of. So
they're just agreeing with you and kind of letting it slide.
They just kind of yes, you agree with you, and then like you say, let it slide.
No, I've definitely, even in high school, I've just seen that from people. Yeah. Is there a way you try to make your classrooms a positive, inclusive classroom environment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I try always. I have a zero tolerance policy in my own classroom, which I think all schools do, but in my own classroom about how we treat each other. There's no name calling or no belittling or anything like that. One thing I started on the first day is trying to teach my kids how to lift each other up and be there for each other and applaud each other's efforts. I also, I try to think of ways I can engage them more. I mean, I use crazy voices, which make them laugh. I let them bring in their own personalities into the room too.
What do you mean?
Well, like I had one little girl this year, she just loved telling jokes. So, I made that a part of our daily routine, is that she became our joke teller of the room and stuff like that. So you try to look for their strengths so that you can build their confidences up that way. Because, you start with the small things that make them feel good, and hopefully it leads to bigger things.
So you adapted it in a way so you're not the big mean teacher who says, sit down, do your work. And
I do that too. Sure, you have to. You have to do that. Otherwise, things would just be a free-for-all all day. And we have a lot of kids with different behavior issues. So you have to try to help them learn how to keep it in check so that they can learn and you can teach. Because that is basically why we are there. You teach them something that they
will go on to the next year.
You take them, yeah. I mean, school does build on itself from year to year to year to year. Or even from week to week a lot of times. So, you do take from what they knew the last year and hopefully apply it this year so they can apply it again the next year. And unfortunately, though, too many kids slip through the system, and a lot of kids that we end up getting are 2 or more grade levels still behind because they don't have the parental support they need. Usually that's where it comes in the worst. And it's not even that parents aren't trying. It's just they don't even understand what we're doing in the school systems today. So that makes it a problem too.
You mentioned there were a lot of students who are a grade or 2 or more
behind.
Yeah. How do you try to do you can only do so much, but what do you do when you're there in your class?
Well, you try to adjust your plans so that you can include them so that they are learning at least at some level. Otherwise, it just gives frustration for them. It's frustration for you. So you try to find ways. It's also sad though that you've tried for years to try to get certain students help, and parents will not help to get their kids that help. And finally, administration even says, okay, we've got to move on. We can't keep putting all the resources into these children, which I thought was unfair. So I would grab kids after school and try to help them too.
What about their parents? Like, how if their parents are picking them up, what do you do?
Well, then of course I can't do it then. But for kids who have, like, we're at our school for after school programs, I could
Metro kids and stuff like that.
Yeah, we didn't do Metro at ours, but it's like that. Yeah, but yes, try to help them so that even if it's 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, the time. But then, also the nicer the weather gets, the more they want to go and play outside. So there's that too.
You don't have to answer this, but you had a student who's about 2 years 2 years behind his grade.
Mm-hmm.
How did that go with your classroom? Like,
well, he was a behavior problem a lot too, because when he was in there just for like morning meetings or things like that didn't involve any kind of learning, he did pretty well. But once you had to get into learning, then frustration started to happen. Because basically he even admitted it. He couldn't read no matter, it did take him from 5 words a minute up to 30 by the end of the year. But, he still couldn't read enough to get the comprehension he needed to understand what he was reading. And if without that, he really couldn't do anything. And that included math too, because math does require a lot of reading because you have to read the directions for one thing.
Yeah, it does.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Anyways, moving along from that, were there any memorable times like teaching throughout the 20 years you were when you were at the same school, I believe? So,
yeah.
Were there any memorable times you like from any of the years that you like to share about?
Well, there are so many. There are some that are very sad, and some that are very funny. We lost students in different ways.
You don't have to share about that if you don't.
I know. I won't go into detail, but which was very heartbreaking for us, of course. And then what's beautiful is, like, this year though, one of my students I had, I taught her in first and second and third grade probably. Had her 19 or 18 years ago, probably ended up being an associate at our school this year.
Oh, really?
And the last day of school, I'm out drinking with her. So because all teachers kind of have to, shout out a little bit at the end of the year. So it was nice to go out and have a beer with her. She was there with all of us, but she and I in particularly, it was lovely.
Did you like us? Did you think it was nice seeing her again after all these years of?
It was wonderful. I love when my students come back, and the thing is, your students will come back to you and say, "Oh, hey," and call you by name, but they've grown up. Whereas, I haven't really changed much in 20 years, except maybe my hair color. And they've grown up, and they don't realize how much they've changed, and we don't automatically recognize them always if we haven't seen them for
20 years.
7.
It's only
9,
been
10, 11 years, things like that. Because they've gone from being little children up to being adults. And so that's a big change. And so I'm like always, okay, just help me here, because you've grown up and you've changed. So you got to
show me a picture.
No, tell me your name and help me out. And then I can usually place them after that. So.
Were there any bad moments you liked that you just liked while working? Like,
yeah, but those were caused more by a coworker from time to time than kids. For the most part, kids are kids. They can't really help it so much. But worked with a coworker. She made my personal life, my working life, just hell for like a year. So
how so?
She would just complain that I wasn't doing my work, and I think this is all retribution from the year before when I had to sub for her, and she wouldn't leave plans, and so I'd have to go get plans from her coworkers what they were doing, and so I think then when I was doing stuff, or the next year when I had to sub for her, and I'd go from her plans, but I went from the manuals too, and so she didn't like it because she would write things out exactly how she wanted the kids to write it down in their books. And I always thought, well, they're supposed to be doing this on their own. I didn't know they were supposed to copy everything down, because that's not learning if they're copying what you're saying. They're not
manuals.
Well, we have workbooks.
Oh, you mean like workbooks, history books, stuff like that.
Things like that. Anything that they were supposed to like write things down and she had it all written out how she wanted them to write it exactly. And I'm thinking, well, that's not really teaching them, and that's not what the manual says to do. I mean, just things like that. And it just, yeah, it.
Okay, so you were just frustrated because you had two different work kind of ways.
Well, it's really involved. It's very involved, actually. So, I mean, to try to explain it in a way that you don't want to hurt anybody, but
we can skip it if you like.
Okay, yeah, let's just move on for that one.
How do you no, we already did that. What strategies do you like to keep do you use to keep the students engaged and motivated?
Well, one of the things I do is I like to use funny voices when I like we just did the American Revolution, and I did I did like a crazy Cockney accent for
Could you show our audience if you don't mind?
Well, I'd sit there like this and say, all right, what are we going to do now? We're all holding this together for, we'd be patriots. And it's like they'd get up from their seats to go back, from the carpet. And I'd say, what are we? And they'd say, we're patriots. And then when we started to learn about loyalists, I switched it up a little bit to a more refined speech, actually, and said, okay, now that we are learning about the loyalists, let's talk about them. These are people who are loyal to the king, things like that. And then for like a math, I like to say, oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's very good what you did. Yeah, oh, you know how to add those together. I love it. I'd like to get up and sing and dance with the kids, or take wacky exercise breaks, or, just one day I had find the lucky penny contest, and if they found the lucky penny around the room, then they got like a pencil or something like that, just to kind of
you try to just do whatever you can to kind of make the lesson interesting.
Yeah, or just to keep the day a little bit more broken up, to help them not get so overwhelmed by things too.
Okay. Next question. And this is some public questions. After technology was used more and more, it's pretty much been used ever since.
Mm-hmm.
How did you break into that? Was it like hard to adjust? Was it hard to adjust when you were online working, or how did you do it?
Well, it was hard in the sense that first I started trying to do it from home, but the internet was not working always from home here. And then when they did allow us back into the schools, and it was like they had to do an alternative schedule. And because of my health issues, they made me the online teacher for the grade level. So I was online every day. So I had to learn a lot of different things. I had to learn how to work with two computers, one monitor screen on my computer. I had to learn how to use different programs we were using to help them with some of the reading things that we had to do, or some of the math stuff we had to do, because I couldn't really, it's just, we were just pulling things, flying by the seat of our pants on some of the stuff. It's not something any of us had ever had to do before, and things that if you didn't teach online on a regular basis, we weren't prepared for or used to. So, and then teachers got exposed. We got exposed to a lot more than we wanted to teaching online. There were times you'd have to turn off the students' cameras because you see too much stuff going on in the background that you didn't want to see, or the kids would just kind of put themselves on freeze and then go wander around their house and do whatever. So, and the bad part of all this is that the parents wouldn't even keep track of their kids who are sitting there at home trying to learn, that they were either playing with them. I had one parent who played with his kid during the class time. And it was just a free for all. And that's why it got so far behind in some areas, I think, for a lot of people.
Is that kind of like what the one of the roles that the parents were lacking? Like, what roles do you think parents should be playing during school?
Well, I think that for one thing, if you're home and your kid is learning online, you have to help out and make sure if you see them wandering around the house that you're getting them back into, it's like, hey, you need to be here at this table or wherever. A lot of my kids would sit in their beds and do it, or sit in the hallway and do it, or stuff like that, but so, okay, if this was the place they were supposed to do it, then they should have been there doing it instead of, A lot of them were made to babysit the other kids during that time. I mean, it was just crazy.
So it was kind of lacking what they were supposed to
Very
do.
much. They lacked any kind of real organization or routines, that type of thing.
How do you assess a student's progress and provide them feedback?
Well, the district has certain standardized testing, which of course everybody in education should abhor, but that we have to do. I think there are some that are good. The data we use are good, but I mean, we use fast testing. A lot of teachers hate fast testing, but I think for what it's for, as long as it's used correctly, it gives you some valuable data. But some of the other tests that they come with the curriculums they didn't purchase them, I guess, are just horrible. I mean, the curriculum themselves don't really jive with where most of the students are, emotionally even. Kids, it's just I don't even know that I get really wound up about this part as far as what's expected of us to do with the curriculum that we're given and how to use it. And then you find out certain teachers are doing it differently, even though you all plan the same, but no one tells you that, oh, we're going to do this differently, even though what we're planning is different than what we're actually doing.
But if it works for them, why is it such a big deal for you?
Because we have certain people in administration that say, if this is what you're supposed to be teaching, and this is when you should be teaching it, and this is how you should be teaching it, even though we want those kids to have productive struggle, well, first you have to teach them how to do something before you just throw it at them when they've never had the skills to learn how to have productive struggle. So it'd be like somebody sitting a toaster in front of me that's broken and say, okay, fix it. I wouldn't know where to begin. And to even try to fix it, and I'd end up maybe getting everybody electrocuted by trying. So, I mean, it should be that there should be some skills that you have to teach no matter what. And then, yes, I agree with productive struggle in that sense. If you don't give them a chance to try it and try it and try it and fail, then it's hard for them to ever learn it and do it successfully.
You're pretty much, you're all for letting them figure it out for themselves, but don't just shove it at them and say, figure this out in 10 minutes and you
right.
fail.
You've got to give them skills to know how to figure it out. I think that's why school was so hard for me when I was a kid. Everything was just like, well, this is how we do it. They show us once and expect you to know it. No, that's not how somebody learns. That's not how a lot of people learn. So
it was way different back in what years did you go to school?
I like my 5th grade year, I think it was 1970.
Oh, okay.
So whatever that was.
So you grew up in the 70s?
Basically, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was way different back then.
Yeah. I mean, my kindergarten, I probably was 1965 when I started kindergarten, so.
Other than basically just parents thinking, oh, it's just a play place for the kids or whatever, what are some misconceptions that you have about teaching elementary school?
Oh, that people have it?
No, yeah, just any misconceptions.
Yeah, I think one of them is that they think that our day starts at 7:10 and ends when the kids go home. That's not true at all. Even after the kids go home, some of us are there 1 or 2 hours there, and then we take home work with us, or we just take work home. We work on the weekends, constantly. It's planning, and prep for getting, your lessons ready every week, because there's a lot to do for each of the curriculums that we're expected to teach. So, and then once summer hits, we don't just stop there either. We have a lot of different classes that we have to take or be involved with in one way or another. So,
like what, if you don't mind?
Well, like right now, I'm taking a second part of a class that I started for my last year where I was teaching. And so now I'm doing the second part of it, which is in a month instead of taking a whole year, which took the part 1 to do. So part 2 I can do in 1 whole month, and big difference. I mean, the time that we waste on PLCs and professional development, so things that they waste our time on is ridiculous, And then they give you maybe a half a day, if you're lucky, at a professional development to even do any of that stuff and get it ready to use also in the classroom. So they just pour all this stuff that you're supposed to know on top of you and expect you to use it, but they don't give you a chance to properly integrate it into your plans to use it.
If you did have time, do you think you would actually be okay with it?
Like the one I'm learning right now, that's my whole point of taking the second part of it, because now I can use August when I go back is to start preparing when I meet the other teachers that I'll be working with and seeing what they do, but hopefully starting to integrate it more into my lessons, daily lessons, because I feel it's a science of reading. I feel it's like one of the first real things that I've had classes for in years that makes any sense as far as integrating it into your classroom.
Okay. Speaking of trying to learn other stuff, how do you teach like diverse culture backgrounds with your students?
Well, we have very diverse backgrounds in our schools these days. Almost every school is pretty diverse. Many students, so by the time, depending on when you get them, their levels of English aren't so bad depending on how old they are when they get to America and they've been exposed to it. This year I did have three students actually that spoke Spanish. One spoke a little English and then she transferred. But the last two I had to print things out in math in Spanish for them. And then I'd have to type things up for the other one, for the reading instruction that we did for the reading and writing. I'd have to go and do Google Translate, and I typed that information up myself for them to have some forms of translation. So you've got to be able, I think that's one thing. I mean, I had other teachers that had students in their classrooms that spoke Spanish, and they just said, oh, well, they can't even read in Spanish, so there's nothing I can do to help. Kind of your job, but you have to find a way to help them. So, but then the way they've done ELL in our city in the last few years is horrible anyway, too. I mean, they give them like 30 minutes of pure ELL training, or not training, but, teaching time with an ELL specialist. And that's not how they should be. Total immersion and then sent to classrooms to learn once they can at least manage the language.
How do you foster your love with learning for students?
Well, I try to relate different stories from my past, and I've been honest with my kids about saying that I struggled a lot with learning, especially math, when I was in school when I was younger. And I told them specifically, I said I didn't want them to have those struggles that I have. But then you also have a lot of students that I don't know why. Yeah, they just don't seem to care. I mean, they will sit and draw on themselves or draw in their books or just talk to somebody next to them or play with their shoes or play with a toy they stuck in their pocket. Just all kinds of things. And then they get pretty upset with the teacher when they are made to stop playing with those things and, say, hey, you really this is important stuff. You need to pay attention to it, And that's the bad thing, the way that the curriculum is now, even though we're supposed to teach less and let them do more. But the way the curriculums are written that we have right now, they have more time for the lessons and they actually give you class time to teach it in. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle to find that balance to help keep them engaged while you're still trying to teach them all the stuff that's expected for them to learn.
How come you don't just do it your own way? Like, this is what we're going to do today.
Because when you're doing your PLCs, that's when you do all your planning for the week. And we get spot visits from the administration. And if we're not doing what we planned to do that week, we get in trouble for that.
What would happen? You just get fired?
No, they can't just fire you. No. But you get reprimanded, and then they might start coming into your classroom more and more, which is very nerve-wracking, especially when you're trying to deal with behaviors on top of teaching. So it's kind of a sad. If I were going into teaching today, I think I've talked 3 people out of going into teaching today because it's just ridiculous. At least maybe my new building, my new experience will put a new fire in me. I'm hoping for that I haven't felt in a long time because we are just so micromanaged that it's just, takes all the joy out of the teaching and the learning part of it.
How many people did you say
I talked out of teaching?
Yeah, how many people?
3.
Oh, so that's a lot. That means you
just
don't
within
really
the last
like
3 years.
It.
Well, it's just that the way that it's going, where responsibilities that are placed on teachers these days for the amount of pay and that they get, and then the expectations of what they're supposed to, how they're supposed to plan and they put all these professional development days in there every month of the year too, that you don't get to use, and you can't really put any of that stuff into your teaching because they didn't give you that planning time either. It's just the burdens basically that they are putting on teachers. It just does not outweigh the joy that you get, or the pay for that matter,
Yeah.
The second part of a class that I started for my last year where I was teaching, and so now I'm doing the second part of it, which is in a month instead of taking a whole year, which took the part one to do. So part two I can do in one whole month, and big difference. I mean, the time that we waste on PLCs and professional developments and things that they waste our time on is ridiculous, And then they give you maybe a half a day, if you're lucky, at a professional development to even do any of that stuff and get it ready to use also in the classroom. So they just like pour all this stuff that you're supposed to know on top of you and expect you to use it, but they don't give you a chance to properly integrate it into your plans to use it.
If you did have time, do you think you would actually be okay with it?
Like the one I'm learning right now, that's my whole point of taking the second part of it, because now I can use August when I go back is to start preparing when I meet the other teachers that I'll be working with and seeing what they do, but hopefully starting to integrate it more into my lessons, daily lessons, because I feel it's a science of reading. I feel it's like one of the first real things that I've had classes for in years that makes any sense as far as integrating it into your classroom.
How do you teach like diverse culture backgrounds with your students?
Well, we have very diverse backgrounds in our schools these days. Almost every school is pretty diverse. Many students, though, by the time, depending on when you get them, their levels of English aren't so bad depending on how old they are when they get to America and they've been exposed to it. This year I did have three students actually that spoke Spanish. One spoke a little English and then she transferred. But the last two I had to print things out in math in Spanish for them. And then I'd have to type things up for the other one, for the reading instruction that we did for the reading and writing. I'd have to go and do Google Translate, and I typed that information up myself for them to have some forms of translation. So you've got to be able, I think that's one thing. I mean, I had other teachers that had students in their classrooms that spoke Spanish, and they just said, oh, well, they can't even read in Spanish, so there's nothing I can do to help them. It's like, well, that's, kind of your job, but you have to find a way to help them. So, but then the way they've done ELL in our city in the last few years is horrible anyway, too. I mean, they give them like 30 minutes of pure ELL training, or not training, but teaching time with an ELL specialist, and that's not how they should be. Total immersion and then sent to classrooms to learn once they can at least manage the language.
How do you foster your love with learning for students?
Well, I try to relate different stories from my past, and I've been honest with my kids about saying that I struggled a lot with learning, especially math, when I was in school when I was younger. And I told them specifically, I said I didn't want them to have those struggles that I have. But then you also have a lot of students that I don't know why. Yeah, they just don't seem to care. I mean, they will sit and draw on themselves, or draw in their books, or just talk to somebody next to them, or play with their shoes, or play with a toy they stuck in their pocket. Just all kinds of things. And then they get pretty upset with the teacher when they are made to stop playing with those things and, say, hey, you really this is important stuff. You need to pay attention to it, And that's the bad thing, the way that the curriculum is now, even though we're supposed to teach less and let them do more. But the way the curriculums are written, that we have right now, they have more time for the lessons, and they actually give you class time to teach it in. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle to find that balance to help keep them engaged while you're still trying to teach them all the stuff that's expected for them to learn.
How come you don't just do it your own way? Like, how come you don't just, say, okay, this is what we're going to do today?
Because when you're doing your PLCs, that's when you do all your planning for the week. And we get spot visits from the administration. And if we're not doing what we planned to do that week, we get in trouble for that.
What would happen? You just get fired?
No, they can't just fire you. No. But you get reprimanded, and then they might start coming into your classroom more and more, which is very nerve-wracking, especially when you're trying to deal with behaviors on top of teaching. So it's kind of a sad. If I were going into teaching today, I think I've talked 3 people out of going into teaching today because it's just ridiculous. At least maybe my new building, my new experience will put a new fire in me. I'm hoping for that I haven't felt in a long time, because we are just so micromanaged that it's just, it takes all the joy out of the teaching and the learning part of it.
So, how many people did you say you took out?
I talked out of teaching?
Yeah, how many people?
3.
Oh, so that's a lot. That means you
just
don't
within
really
the last
like
3 years.
it.
Well, it's just that the way that it's going, where the responsibilities that are placed on teachers these days for the amount of pay and that they get, and then the expectations of what they're supposed to, how they're supposed to plan they put all these professional development days in there every month of the year too, that you don't get to use, and you can't really put any of that stuff into your teaching because they didn't give you that planning time either. It's just the burdens basically that they are putting on teachers. It just does not outweigh the joy that you get, or the pay for that matter,
Yeah. What would you say your favorite classroom activity was? Or project, at least?
Oh, well, this is back when we used to do project-based learning.
Go ahead.
This was really hands-on. This is when I felt when kids really learned. Everything we did, the kids did. And when you want to see productive struggle, we were doing communities one year, and I think there was 5 different communities they had to sign up for. We had a rainforest community, we had an urban community, we had a suburban community.
You mean like BizTown?
No. In our classroom. I mean, we were learning about the rainforest community. So anyway, each community they signed up for, they had to research it, and then they had to build it. So in my classroom, I had over by one side, they had a jungle going up the wall, and they went out and we collected sticks so they could build little huts that set up above the ground for, the water they prefer.
I think we had something like that in my school.
That would be, I hope so, but I haven't seen that in a long time. But it was a joy then to teach that kind of stuff. And then kids had to map out, for another one, they had to map out their downtown. They had to make skyscrapers out of boxes and things like that. That's when learning was fun. We did one where we, can't remember how we incorporated the dinosaurs at this point, but one of the groups made an actual, out of paper. It was, 1-dimensional or 2-dimensional, I guess, but out of paper, that they cut out a T-Rex. They had to measure everything, cut out the paper. And then we had to have help, though, because it was so tall. We taped it to the sides of the gym. Our gym and cafeteria were in the same area that time. And they taped it to the side of the wall. And so they had to get pretty tall ladders to get it up all the way up on the wall for the T-Rex there. And just different things like that. The kids could get involved with. I had a friend who would bring his crew. He had a camera crew, and they would shoot each kid's project that they did, and then they'd added music to it, and
that's cool.
They would edit it and the whole thing and bring it back, and each kid would get a DVD of it as a gift from their project that they had to do.
Oh, that's cool. That was nice. Did you ask them, or did you just volunteer?
Well, I was talking about what the kids were doing, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to do that." So he did it for several years.
Oh, that's really nice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like to update your work methods when working with kids?
Well, I don't know. I think sometimes if it's not broken, don't fix it. So that's some things that just behaviors. I see so many teachers that struggle with behaviors. And my first year I did too. So I learned how to fix it. And that is you repetition. They have to do something 21 times, I think is the science behind it, is 21
The
times.
kids?
Yeah, anybody to really learn how to do it properly. So, I mean, they didn't do it properly. We'd have to do it again and again until they did it properly. And then it got to the point where you didn't have to worry about it because it just became a second nature for them to do things a certain way, so that things could get accomplished.
So you have a child and a husband, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
With work and, home life, how do you kind of balance that?
Well, this past 2 years have been a bad balance, actually, because of just the expectations of not having a classroom, getting put into a classroom, getting taken out of a classroom, getting intervention, going back to a full classroom. I've been kind of jostled around a lot depending on what was needed, and that caused a lot of extra work on my end, because they were putting me in positions that I wasn't prepared for, because I wasn't told I was going to be doing them until 2 days prior to when it usually happened. So, and they put me with curriculums that I had never taught before. So that was, and I didn't have a chance to start planning with the other team members, like you're supposed to be able to. So, I mean, there were just different things. I'm hoping that the new school year will bring a lot less work stress as far as that goes. The school that I just left was unusual in that I have to say I'm probably well equipped in a lot of areas, thanks to all the learning that we've had. But because of that too, it was much more stress, not just for me, but anyone who worked in the school too. I mean, it was just very stressful to learn all these things and then not be able to use them, but expected to know them.
How would you say your typical day in classroom would be like?
A typical day is the kids come in and bring their breakfast in the morning. They eat in the classroom. In our schools, everyone gets breakfast and lunch for free. So we didn't have to worry about any of that, because so many of our families are low income. And then another thing is that after that, we kind of in the middle of that, we have our morning meeting, because they do announcements on the overhead speakers. And we'd have our morning meeting just to show what we were going to be doing today. I'd add a joke in there. I had a video usually that they, after we meeting, I said, okay, back to your desk, finish your breakfast. I'll have a video. You can watch that. And it usually had something to do with whatever we were going to learn about. Like when we were working on the American Revolution or the 19th Amendment, all different kinds of things. I had videos that went with it, so they could kind of watch that while they were finishing their breakfast, and then we could get started into what was called EL, and that would be our subject for comprehension, basically, for where we would explore different parts of history, do writing and reading, that kind of thing. And then from there, it would go into a win time, which is students who were struggling in different areas would go to different groups and get extra help for like 20, well, for ours, it was only 20 minutes during the morning for reading, and then go into lunch and recess, and then back in, and then we do math. And then we go after about almost an hour of math, I guess. Go back out for another recess, and then come back in, and then the win time for math. You get like 25 minutes for that. For students who were struggling in math, they would have different groups that they went to get that help. And then the end of the day, we had what was called SEL time. And there's a second step program where you help to kind of learn or how to teach the kids how to coping skills. It's mostly for
like anxiety,
social, emotional, how to cope with things, because people are not born knowing how to deal with situations. So it's hopefully it gives them a better idea that instead of just automatically wanting to fight about something, you learn how to work with teamwork. You learn how to work with each other. You learn how to give yourself permission to be upset, but also to handle it in a way that does not hurt anybody else.
Do you think it's helped with any students that you've had?
Honestly, I've not seen anything. I think there's probably better ways to do this, but
So it's
you know,
basically just a class they go to.
it's just, well, it was just like 20 minutes of the day,
Well, that
basically. If we were lucky, we could get to it 3 times a week. If we were lucky for that too. So, I mean, the thing is like, yeah, they push all this stuff in there, but it's not really consistent. It's not really taught with fidelity a lot of times. And, and then, you're with the kids all day long, teaching them the one way, but then they go home and things are completely different in their home life, and they bring that back the next day with them. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle a lot of times.
I don't know if maybe I asked before with a couple of questions, but coming back to that, how do you keep your students engaged during online classes?
Well, like I said, I use the different voices.
Oh,
You
so
know,
it's kind of the same either
yeah,
way.
yeah, I use the different voices. I try to do things with humor because I think when people are happy, they are more likely to want to learn or be engaged. So that keeps them from being less bored and usually brings out a better side to them so that they don't want to get upset with other people either.
What about technology tools? Do you find anything really effective?
Well, technology, since COVID, there are uh, schools that specifically have online learning, but that's when a parent wants to sign their child up for it. And it's usually a stay at home parent that will do this too. And a child that wants to do it. Like us, kids were just forced to do it. They didn't have a choice because we had to have school. So, I mean, it makes a big difference, as far as how much they're learning or not, too. But we also have different machines, within our building now that, we don't have the old overheads like they used to have. Now we have Epson whiteboards, yeah, smart boards and stuff that we would use, different things like that helps to. I mean, PowerPoints. We use a lot of PowerPoints in our learning these days, that type of thing. So,
How do you address the needs of students who have limited access to technology at home, like if they don't have Wi-Fi or anything like that?
well, for elementary now that it's not it's not COVID, that's not a worry that we have anymore because for elementary school where we are, there is no homework. Mostly because a lot of the parents just, they don't understand what we're doing or how we're doing it in school because of new methods or this or that. And so we don't have homework, so we don't have to worry about that, them having internet or anything, because that did cause a lot of problems for us before, where we did learn a lot of parents didn't have Wi-Fi at home. We had to figure out how to get all the homes in Des Moines,
With mobile Wi-Fi and all
yeah,
that.
that type of thing, hotspots.
How was the transition going back to school after COVID?
Well, it was nicer in some ways that you didn't have to deal with all that technology in that way, but the behaviors were just like, because kids weren't used to being in school anymore. So, a lot of them didn't know how to walk in a line or to sit still and pay attention or
But didn't they know that before?
well, if they did, they certainly didn't seem to retain it. So, I mean, that's, and I'm not saying every student is like that, but that was probably the biggest majority of the problem, was just trying to get that routine set up again for kids. It's like, nope, you can't just wander off to a bathroom anytime you want. Nope, you don't have a kitchen there if you just want to wander off to that. You do have to sit here. We do have routines. We do have timelines. It's like we only have 15 minutes for this. We only have 45 minutes for this. So they weren't used to having such a set schedule that we have in a school setting.
What measures were implemented in your school for ensuring the safety of students and staff during in-person school?
Oh, in-person learning for COVID?
Yeah.
Well, okay, then that's been 4 years ago. So we had to, at the time when they were trying to bring kids back, they went in and they had to measure out the space in between the desks.
Wasn't it 6 feet?
Something like that. Yeah, I think that was right. Where the desk could be seated. They had to measure out. We cut out anyone sitting on the carpet at that time because they'd be too close together. Everybody wore face masks. Everybody, and that was a struggle for some of the itty bitties, just to get used to doing that. And the ones that just absolutely, and then there were parents that didn't believe in it at all.
Into what?
Wearing face masks at all. They didn't.
The anti-vaxxers and stuff.
Well, they just didn't believe the COVID that it was really that real and it was really that dangerous, even though the data shows that it was quite real and it was quite dangerous. So there was a lot as far as that goes. Couldn't use the drinking fountains anymore for a while. There were hand sanitizing stations everywhere in the classroom, hallways, everywhere.
Okay, so it was basically another world, pretty much.
Yeah, it was there for a while. Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, until everything kind of went, until like the vaccines came more normal, everything shifted back to like new normal.
I will say though, because of that, even to this day, you still see some teachers and some students that will wear face masks some of the time. I know I have when I've been sick or kids are sick in my classroom. I'll pull a face mask out and wear it again because I don't even care if it's just a cold. So you still see that going on, and I think it did teach us that yeah, germs are real, people.
How do you manage your own stress being a teacher during like how did you being a teacher and everything?
Honestly, I have a counselor that I have to talk to every once in a while just to get a lot of that, to unload all of that. You have teacher friends that are going through the same thing that you're going through, and they're good to talk to. They're a great source to talk to, if you can get with them to do that. To have supportive family really helps a lot. And that makes a big difference for you because it's a world that unless you are in it, you don't really fully understand it.
It's like you're faking it almost, like to other people.
I suppose it could be, but I mean, it can be so overwhelming that you don't know how to deal. I mean, even as an adult, it's hard. I mean, it's hard for an adult, so just can't even imagine how hard it is for a child. If an adult who knows it is overwhelmed by teaching it, then it's got to be so horrifically more so overwhelming for a student who struggle, especially if they struggle with learning, to try to learn it.
The pandemic, were there any long-term changes that had on the education for kids and high schoolers?
Well, like what was interesting is like when you talk about the COVID, the fifth graders that from our school this year that were going to be promoted up to sixth grade, they were my second graders when we were doing COVID. And you could just tell there were, that they did have its repercussions as far as academics went,
like they behind or what?
Well, yeah, because then they were having, once they came back into school and were doing third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade, it seemed like they were just constantly trying to play catch up for things that they didn't quite catch on to in second grade. And even the kids who did come back to the classroom in second grade during that COVID time, even it was tough for them because they weren't in school every single day. They had like A and B schedules, I think it was. So that was kind of difficult, and then some kids would be in online and then they'd be in the classroom again and they'd be back online again. So there was just so much shifting around that then expect them all to go into third grade and to know what to do. That was a big struggle for a lot.
How did you address all of that? Of course, you couldn't really just go to a principal, but how did you address and fix the problem for the most part?
Well, you just did the best you can. You just try to set routines. The best thing, if anybody ever does anything, is to set a consistent routine. Because if nothing else, that consistency affords them a little less frustration in knowing what to do. They know, okay, at this time, this is what we're supposed to be doing, okay? And then you just do the best you can to try to get them there to hopefully understand it. It's a lot of questioning too. You got to question them a lot. It's like, what do you understand? What is it you're not getting? That type of thing. And then you try to figure out how you can fix your teaching to accommodate them in a better way.
What new skills or approaches have you incorporated in your teaching practice post-pandemic, or you have talked about that pretty much?
Yeah, I think we've talked about that pretty much already. I mean, the thing is, every year, as old as I get, I hope that I never stop learning, especially on how I can improve my teaching skills for kids, because the way kids are learning, the things that they are learning, changes too. And so we have to adapt to that as well. So it is finding those ways to keep them engaged in a way, and it's finding a better way to teach the curriculum that we're given, I think is going to continue to be the biggest challenge always. So that's what seems to be the more important goal right now, is making sure that I can adapt to what their needs are so that they can learn and be successful.
If you had to choose, like one day you were given the chance saying you can choose K through 12th grade, which one would you choose right off the bat?
I think sixth grade, because I saw some of the stuff that they were doing in sixth grade for the reading, which is where I did reading. Writing is my big thing, one of my strong points is, but I saw some of the curriculum that they were learning from, and one of them was mythology. I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's for me. So.
Okay. What about it that you like?
Well, I like the stories of the I love the Greek stories of
Is that
the
like
gods
Percy
and
Jackson
goddesses.
and all that?
I mean, the actual Greek mythology of it all.
Yeah.
Would it be fun to bring some of that fiction into it? Yes, it would. But to actually teach them about the actual Greek gods, both what those particular gods were famous for, what they did, what they shouldn't have done. I mean, just that type of thing. And it would have been interesting to see. I didn't get into the books that they had to read or anything like that. I just saw that was one of the modules, and I thought that looked pretty fascinating. So, yeah. And maybe it's just because it was different too. I don't know. And I think plus sixth grade appealed because they're just out of fifth, and I'm used to being around fifth graders, so sixth would be kind of a natural progression for me too.
You're at a new school. What's stopping you from going to sixth grade?
I got a second grade position, which is my that's where my passion is in second grade. I love that because they're just finally getting to the age where they really are able to learn more and understand more. But they're still so dang sweet. And I want to say that my fourth graders had this year were absolutely adorable because they could be absolutely, but I mean, and they're very caring, but they're just nicer to each other in that age still, kind of.
What are your thoughts on the future of remote and hybrid learning, if you think that might be coming back in the next 10 years or so?
Well, I think that actually, I suppose it could come back, but I think that the thing is, if nothing else, hopefully that people who came up with how we were teaching or doing it all this past time, whoever the powers that be to do that, have a greater understanding of it then, and can figure out a better way to structure it so that the kids at home are learning. That we don't lose that type of thing. So,
how do you usually plan your lessons?
Well, you usually plan them with the other teachers in your grade level. So that's what the PLCs are for. You go, I think my old school, it was 2 times a week for math and reading. And then sometimes we'd have a PLC for data to go over, test scores to see how the kids were doing, or we'd have a PLC for behavior to see if any of the kids we were struggling with were improving in some of the plans that we had for them. My new school will do it 3 times a week, where they do a PLC for math, one for reading and writing, and another one's a skills block, which is what they do from first and kindergarten, and it teaches specific skills that they need for the reading and writing. And I'm looking forward to that. I think that will be really good. So, you usually plan with your other colleagues. I mean, and you get to the point where you know who your students are, and you say, okay, but I've got this kid. Any ideas for this guy or this little girl or whatever? You try to, if you're struggling with an idea on how to help them, that's what the PLCs are there to support you too, to help you figure out maybe a different way that you hadn't thought of yet.
Is that kind of how you try to accommodate their 504 plans?
Yeah, exactly. You have to have diversity.
How do you communicate in instruction with special education staff, like people who have gifted students and talented teachers and all that?
Well, I used to be the GT coordinator at our school a while back, and that was you were in touch with the person with the district, and they got them into the book clubs for reading, and they got them involved in some different. I mean, they would provide us with different things that we needed to accommodate like gifted children. Anyone who's lower for special ed needs. You have special ed teachers that they would pull them, and usually only 30 minutes a day is all they get. But then the special ed teachers too, when they weren't doing those pullouts, the teachers would hopefully be in the room able to help the students that needed it that way. It's not always the case because of funding, and the staffing gets cut so badly, and it's just the things that we need. as far as human beings, we don't seem to get that.
What's your approach on long-term planning?
Oh, I think, you know what we do, and this is what I have always done, it's called backwards planning.
What's that?
Well, that's where where you see where you're supposed to be, where you want the kids to be. So you figure out how you're going to get there, kind of going backwards. It's like, I don't know, whenever I've ever done mazes, I've always started at the end and gone backwards to the beginning. It just always made more sense to me for that for some reason. It was easier to find my way that way. So we do our backward planning is in that we know what standards that we are supposed to have the kids at by the end of that lesson or the end of that unit, so that we can plan each day accordingly, hopefully, and address those so that by the time we get there, hopefully they're solid or as solid as possible there.
Okay, imagine this. You just completed a lesson, and tell us about how you would assess whether or not the student grasped the concept or he's just faking it for the grade.
Well, all the tests are pre-done for us according to the curriculum. So each curriculum that our district acquired, they come with their own standardized tests according to that. But I've also noticed that this is something that's been driving me nuts. There's so many mistakes in the workbooks and the manuals that don't match, with certain things. And the test doesn't always have what you taught during the unit, which didn't make sense to me at all either. So I think that's one thing that we are starting to become more aware of, that what the curriculum that we have been given to teach isn't actually jiving with the standards all the time. So we have to find other ways to make sure that we are incorporating what they need. And that's why their planning is so important.
How do you motivate a student to learn if they're stubborn? They don't not want to learn at all.
Well, we do work with our behaviorists in our buildings too. We come up with certain different behavior plans. A lot of times parents have to sign off on them to make sure that we can do those behavior plans. We can just do them always. Or we have different incentives within the class. We have classroom parties. Like if somebody does really well, we'll say, oh my gosh, you just earned your class point for that. So that it makes them feel good when they do something little to keep them hopefully getting on to doing something bigger. You check for understanding constantly and try to figure out ways you can get them to learn it. Maybe the same concept, but you might have to go to a lower level to teach it to them. So they're still getting the concept, but maybe just not all the content that you would teach with kids who are on grade level.
Is there ever been a time that you just could never get them back up, like in your 20 years of teaching?
Oh yeah, and it hurts too. I mean, because you want to see your kids. I mean, these kids that come in your classroom, they become your kids. I mean, you're with them a lot of times more than their families at home are during the day. So you want to see them be successful. You want to see them learn. You want them to feel that. You want them to feel what it feels like to be successful, to have that confidence, so that they can use it in a productive way. And, there are kids that no matter what you do, I've been taught how to teach. I haven't been taught how to be a school counselor. I haven't been taught how to be an emotional a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a behavior specialist. But the thing is, after so many years, you start to know the signs of certain things after being with so many kids over the years, that you can recognize things pretty quickly, but nobody will take you seriously about that at times either. So that's kind of a bad part.
What do you do if they don't follow your classroom procedures?
Parents are going to be parents. I mean, that's just the way that is. But I mean, in the classroom, if they're not following classroom procedures or routines, then we have protocols put into place for that. And sometimes it's a referral to the office in some form. They'll miss recess and not just sit there. They have to do the work that they wouldn't do during the classroom. They have to do it during recess. And if they won't do it at that recess, they have a second recess that they can try to finish it on. But I've had kids say, well, gosh, we're doing that tomorrow. I'm not coming. It's like, well, here's the thing. you'll do it when you come back. So you can miss tomorrow, but then you will do it when you come back. But then that puts them further behind with the other stuff that they're doing, which they learn that too, hopefully.
Now I'm gonna last 3 questions. It was nice. It was lovely having you here. Thank you for saying.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anyway, but these are my last stuff. These are some personal questions.
Okay.
Number 1, what do you think? Are you happy with like all of you've accomplished in the last 20 years of working at Apple?
I feel that the last 20 years have not been wasted. The jobs I had before, some jobs were fun, some jobs were this or that, but they were never anything that provided a real meaning to me or to my life. Whereas getting into teaching is finally something that I feel like I can hopefully, you're not going to make a difference in every child's life. I wish it were possible, but it's having those kids come back to you and say, as adults, oh, Miss Smith taught me how to read, or, just say, just telling you stuff like that, or having them tell other people, it's like, oh yeah, she taught me how to read, she taught me how to do math, she taught me how to do this or that. Hearing that kind of stuff it's gratifying in a way that it's not makes your head swell, it makes your heart swell. But to know that you had that kind of an impact, that you did make a difference and did help them. So.
Oh, I bet it does. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Our very last question, and I went on Reddit. I asked in a post, what would you like to ask the elementary school teacher? I got one reply, and here it is.
Okay.
What is your favorite milkshake? Well, what is it?
It's vanilla. I love vanilla milkshakes. I love the creamy smoothness of them. I know what to expect. I mean, strawberry's too sweet for me. Chocolate can be too sweet. Vanilla just never lets me down.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I would have expected chocolate for you for some reason.
I know you'd think that because I'm a chocoholic, but no, I like a good old smooth, creamy vanilla shake. Not a malt. I don't like malteds. I like just plain old shakes.
Now you get 10 seconds to shout out whatever you want. Any resource, company, thing you like, whatever. 10.
Science of reading. If you haven't had a chance to learn science of reading and you're a teacher, do it. I mean, it's life-changing.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on here. I hope to have you one day again. And it was lovely getting to meet you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. Hope I helped out, or hope somebody gets some insight from all of this.
Well, let's hope the post does. Enjoy your day.
Thank you so much.